Good. There's so many of you are deciding to spend your perfectly serviceable Saturday mornings to come to a place like this, listening to the Dhamma, contemplating on the Dhamma. And sometimes we can ask ourselves, what is actually the value of listening to the Dhamma, or what is the role of hearing the Dhamma on the path to awakening? Is it important only at the very beginning for a newcomer? But maybe once you have become a stream enterer, is it still necessary? Or does the stream enterer already have the Dhamma in himself, in his heart, so that he doesn't have to listen to it anymore? How about the once returner, non-returner, Arahant? Actually, there's an interesting sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, Book of 6, that one will shed some light on this question. But in order to fully understand the sutta, we also have to understand a little bit of the background of the different stages of awakening. I've just mentioned the 4 stages: stream entry, once return, non-return, and arahantship. And there's actually a system behind that. How does one become a stream enterer, and so on? Most importantly, it's the 10 fetters, the 10 samyojanas that disappear along these stages. So the first 3 of the 10 fetters, the 10 fetters are things that bind you to existence, that bind us towards samsara. Because of those 10 fetters, bonds, we cannot escape from samsara. So the first 3 are already eliminated by the stream enterer. What are they? Personality view, sakkaya ditthi, identification, believing that the body or the feelings or consciousness, any one of the 5 aggregates, believing that any one of them is your true self, your soul, your core of existence. Stream enterer does not have this view anymore, this perspective. That's the first fetter that goes away. Second one, skeptical doubt. He has faith in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, conviction, unshakable trust in the teachings of the Buddha that they can lead to awakening. He has not yet reached the final stage of awakening, but he has sufficient trust and no more doubt that the Buddha was a fully awakened one, that the Dhamma, his teachings, are leading to awakening. And the Sangha are those who have walked that path. And then the third fetter that goes away, attachment to rites and rituals. Maybe you've seen in documentaries, or maybe you've been to India yourself. Even nowadays, there's still many of these practices where some sadhus or gurus, they undertake very ascetic practices. There's the belief, the understanding, maybe that by lying down only on a bed of nails, or by keeping the hands in the air all the time, for weeks, months and years, never taking the arm down, that will be the path to purification. So that kind of bodily torture and bodily torment, these kinds of practice the Buddha has discovered are actually not the path to awakening. Even though they're very difficult and painful and austere, the Buddha discovered the middle way, isn't it? So also this perspective that these practices could lead to awakening, this attachment to these certain rules, on account of which there's the belief, just doing that right, I will get awakening. That one also the stream enterer does not have anymore. These are the first 3 fetters that disappear. Then the next stage is the once returner, the one who will return only once, one further existence, or at least to the sense sphere. So what does he accomplish? In order to become a once returner, what do you have to do? Reduce attachment to sense desires, to sense pleasures, and also reduce ill will. Not yet completely eliminated, but significantly reduced. So that's also quite an accomplishment already, but you can see how difficult sense desires and ill will are probably to overcome, that even in the second stage of awakening, it's still hanging around, it's still here, and from time to time getting activated. Yet, the once returner has already significantly reduced them. And it's only the non-returner who never comes back to these planes of existence, who might be reborn if he has a rebirth in the Suttavasa, in the pure abodes. Only the non-returner has completely overcome sense desires and ill will. And then, last stage, so how many fetters have we diminished already? 5. So 5 we have diminished, but there's still 5 left. So the last 5 are only eliminated by the Arahant, or by the Anagami on the path to Arahantship, you can say. So what are they? The last 5 fetters: conceit, yes, mana, comparing oneself with others. I'm better, I'm equal, I'm worse than others. So the sense of identification, yes. Then ignorance, avijja. Only the Arahant completely eradicates ignorance. And how about restlessness? No more restlessness for the Arahant. And then 2 fetters that are related to higher dimensions of samadhi. He has no more attachment to the jhanas, to the rupa, to the fine material existence or becoming, and also not even to the immaterial, to the formless attainments. These ones also the Arahant has overcome. So it does not cling to anything anymore, not even to lofty states of meditation, you can say. So these are the 10 fetters. Okay? So if the first 3 disappear with stream entry, the second 2, sense desire and ill will, are diminished with one's return. Then with non-return, these 2 are completely overcome, and the Arahant has overcome also the last 5. Okay? So this is good to keep in mind, in the back of our mind, when we read the next sutta, because the sutta doesn't explain it, it just speaks about the 10 fetters. So now we can come back, or start actually with this discourse that sheds light on the role of the Dhamma, on hearing and reflecting on the Dhamma along these stages of awakening. Whether this still plays a role, or maybe it's just for beginners, well, let's have a look. So Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Sixes, Sutta number 56, Phakguna. Phakguna. Now on a certain occasion, the Venerable Phakguna was sick, afflicted, gravely ill. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Bhante, the Venerable Phakguna is sick, afflicted, gravely ill. Please let the Blessed One visit him out of compassion. So it would be nice if the Buddha comes for a visit. Just imagine yourself, you're sick. And then the Buddha knocks on the door. Hello, I heard you're sick. So, of course, Phakguna was a monk at that time, and he knew the Buddha pretty well. So the Blessed One consented by silence. Then in the evening, the Blessed One emerged from seclusion and went to Venerable Phakguna. The Venerable Phakguna saw the Blessed One coming in the distance, so he could see him approaching already, and stirred on his bed. So he's kind of trying to get up, trying to be polite, respectful, greet the Buddha. So he was trying to get up, but he was sick, not so easy for him. Then the Buddha came already and said, enough, Phakguna, do not stir on your bed. You don't have to sit up, just relax, just stay there. There are these seats that have been prepared. I will sit down there. So Phakguna was probably attempting to prepare a seat for the Buddha, which is our monastic tradition. If a senior monk comes in, or if the Buddha comes in, we would certainly prepare a seat, a cushion, maybe some straw underneath in ancient times. So Phakguna was trying to get up, but then Buddha says, don't worry, there's already some seats around, I'll just sit down there. So the Blessed One sat down and said to the Venerable Phakguna, I hope you're bearing up. I hope you're getting better. I hope that your painful feelings are subsiding and not increasing, and that their subsiding, not their increase, is to be seen. So here the Buddha inquires a little bit, how are you doing? Are you feeling better already? And then Phakguna says, well, Bhante, I'm not bearing up. I'm not getting better. Strong, painful feelings are increasing in me, not subsiding. And their increase, not their subsiding, is to be seen. And then he gives the simile. Just as if a strong man were to grind my head with the tip of a sharp sword, so too violent winds cut through my head. My goodness. So in other words, he has severe headache, migraine. I'm not bearing up. Or just as if a strong man were to tighten a tough leather strap around my head as a headband, so too there are violent head pains in my head. So somebody would put a strap or a belt around your head and then just pull it very tight. That's how he felt. Just as if a skilled butcher or his apprentice were to carve up an ox's belly with a sharp butcher's knife, so too violent winds are carving up my belly. So he has not only headache, but also stomach pain. Oh my, I'm not bearing up. Just as if two strong men were to seize a weaker man by both arms and roast and grill him over a bit of hot coals. That's not kind. So too, there is a violent burning in my body. I'm not bearing up under, I'm not getting better. Strong, painful feelings are increasing in me, not subsiding. And their increase, not their subsiding, is to be seen. So he's kind of reporting in great detail and with some similes, that he's not feeling very well. First, the Blessed One instructed, encouraged, inspired, and gladdened the Venerable Bhaguna with a Dhamma talk. So the Buddha gave him a teaching, we don't know what it is, after which he got up from his seat and left. So the Buddha went there, inquired about his well-being, and shared some Dhamma with the Venerable Bhaguna. And then after the Buddha had left, not long after the Blessed One left, the Venerable Bhaguna died. At the time of his death, his faculties were serene. So quite interesting, he had serene faculties. Good complexion, it seems, he didn't seem too distressed. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Bhante, not long after the Blessed One left, the Venerable Bhaguna died. At the time of his death, his faculties were serene. So Venerable Ananda reports the matter to the Buddha, who had already left at that time. Then the Buddha says to him, why, Ananda, shouldn't the Bhikkhu Bhaguna's faculties have been serene? Of course, that's the case. Though his mind had not yet been liberated from the 5 lower fetters, remember the 5 lower fetters? So he has not yet been liberated from the 5 lower fetters. When he heard that discourse on the Dhamma, his mind was liberated from them. So before he heard the Dhamma, he was a worldling, a putujana, most likely. Or maybe he was a stream-enterer, we don't know. Because the stream-enterer is also not liberated from the 5 lower fetters. So maybe he had only eradicated 3 at a time. It's not explicitly mentioned. But then when he listened to the Dhamma, at that time, the 5 fetters disappeared, just like that. There are, Ananda, these 6 benefits, the Buddha says, of listening to the Dhamma at the proper time and of examining the meaning at the proper time. So the Buddha uses this occasion now to elaborate on the 6 benefits of listening to the Dhamma and reflecting on the Dhamma at the right time. Shall we try to find out? What is the first one? Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu's mind is not yet liberated from the 5 lower fetters. But at the time of his death, he gets to see the Tathagata, the Buddha. The Tathagata teaches him the Dhamma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. With the right meaning and phrasing, he reveals a spiritual life that is perfectly complete and pure. So the Buddha gives him a Dhamma sharing. When the bhikkhu hears that discourse on the Dhamma, his mind is liberated from the 5 lower fetters. This is the first benefit of listening to the Dhamma at the proper time. So basically, just by listening, paying proper attention, when he hears that, the mind gets liberated from the 5 lower fetters. So nothing mentioned about practicing a lot of samadhi and all other meditation retreats that we're doing. Of course, this can all be supportive, but listening to the Dhamma is one occasion where a person can get liberated already. Or in this case, at least become an anagami, because the 5 lower fetters are extinguished. Quite amazing. This is the first benefit. Not so bad, huh? Secondly, again, a bhikkhu's mind is not yet liberated from the 5 lower fetters. At the time of his death, he does not get to see the Tathagata. So he's not yet an anagami, and also the Buddha does not knock on his door. But he gets to see a disciple of the Tathagata. The Tathagata's disciple teaches him the Dhamma, same as before. That is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and the end. And reveals a spiritual life that is perfectly complete and pure. When the bhikkhu hears that discourse on the Dhamma, his mind is liberated from the 5 lower fetters. This is the second benefit of listening to the Dhamma at the proper time. So, what is the difference between this one and the previous one? The first one, the Buddha himself is teaching the Dhamma to you. The second one of his disciples is teaching the Dhamma. So which one is better? Same. If it's the Dhamma, the true Dhamma, who says is not so crucial, rather than the person paying attention, taking it to heart, contemplating on it, that is the important factor. Whether it's the Buddha standing there, but the person is not paying attention, no benefit of having the Buddha there. And so even a disciple of the Buddha may be able to share the Dhamma accurately, and one may attain stages of awakening. Thirdly, again, a bhikkhu's mind is not yet liberated from the 5 lower fetters. At the time of his death, he does not get to see the Tathagata or a disciple of the Tathagata. So, not even that. But he ponders, examines, and mentally inspects the Dhamma as he has heard it and learned it. So he ponders and reflects on the Dhamma, maybe he has heard it on an earlier occasion during his life. As he does so, his mind is liberated from the 5 lower fetters. This is the third benefit of examining the meaning at the proper time. So he's not a complete newcomer, he has heard the Dhamma before, and now he's close to death, golden opportunity in a certain way, has not yet attained the highest stages of awakening, yet he has heard enough Dhamma to bring it back to mind. So maybe he came to Dims many times, like you are doing, and then at the time of death, hopefully some memory will come back. And at that time, the mind may reflect on the Dhamma, and you can, of course, if you just wait for that to happen spontaneously, this is one way, but another way would be to deliberately direct the mind towards recollecting the Dhamma, pondering over it. And of course also we don't have to wait until we are on the deathbed. It's also allowable to do that beforehand. So as he reflects on that, his mind gets liberated from the 5 lower fetters. That's the third benefit. Number 4. Here, Ananda, a bhikkhu's mind is liberated from the 5 lower fetters. It is liberated from the 5 lower fetters, but not yet liberated in this unsurpassed extinction of the acquisitions. So he has not made an end to the sankharas. There's still karma being performed, and he's still not an arahant. He still has avijja, he still has mana, clinging to fine material and immaterial existence or becoming. So he's an anagami. Then at the time of his death, he gets to see the Tathagata. The Tathagata teaches him the Dhamma just as before, and reveals the spiritual life that is perfectly complete and pure. When the bhikkhu hears that discourse on the Dhamma, his mind is liberated in the unsurpassed extinction of the acquisitions. This is the 4th benefit of listening to the Dhamma at the proper time. So, somebody who is already an anagami hears the Dhamma from the Buddha, and while hearing the Dhamma, now we can assume that he has already heard the Dhamma before. It's not the first time. Otherwise he wouldn't be an anagami. But there could be some aspects that have not been entirely clear, or might be just needed to be remembered about something that he has heard before, but bring it back to his attention. Especially if the Buddha stands in front of you and gives you a Dhamma talk, surely the person will give close attention. So that can be sufficient again, even for the highest stages of awakening, even for becoming an arahant in this case. So it's quite amazing how powerful and important it is to hear the Dhamma in all these cases. So this is the 4th benefit of listening to the Dhamma at the proper time. Number 5, a bhikkhu's mind is liberated from the 5 lower fetters, but not yet liberated in the unsurpassed extinction of the acquisitions. At the time of death, the Buddha is not around, but gets to see a disciple of the Buddha. So same as before, and then on that occasion again, he can overcome the 5 higher fetters. So let's see, what is the last one, number 6. Again, a bhikkhu's mind is liberated from the 5 lower fetters, but not yet liberated in the unsurpassed extinction of the acquisitions. again, he's not yet an Arahant. At the time of his death, he does not get to see the Tathagata or a disciple of the Tathagata. But he ponders, examines, and mentally inspects the Dhamma as he has heard it and learned it. As he does so, his mind is liberated in the unsurpassed extinction of the acquisitions. This is the sixth benefit of examining the meaning at the proper time. So again, it's an Anagami who does not listen to the Dhamma right now, but he reflects on it. The Dhamma that he has heard, that he has memorized, maybe even recited by heart, which was the tradition at the Buddha's time. Then he thinks it's over, ponders it over, and on that occasion becomes an Arahant. These are the six benefits, Ananda, of listening to the Dhamma at the proper time and of examining the meaning at the proper time. So now coming back to the original question that I posed, for which of the stages of awakening is contemplating and listening to the Dhamma important? First one, for becoming a stream enterer, yes. Middle ones, yes. Even all the way up to Arahantship. All of them can benefit, in these cases, from listening or reflecting on the Dhamma. And again, the important takeaway, whether it's the Buddha who teaches it or a disciple, doesn't really matter. Nowadays, we are in the fortunate situation that the Dhamma is on books. Well, if you can read and have access to it, almost as good as hearing it from a disciple or maybe even from a Buddha. Of course, there's some added benefits of seeing the Buddha, the trust and the faith probably increase, and you see the good conduct. But just seeing the Dhamma itself and hearing it and pondering it over, that in itself is very valuable. And we should not underestimate the value of that. And that's within our hands. When we sit in our tip of your fingers nowadays, you can find online so many resources, or on YouTube, there are channels where we hear the Dhamma, but it's not always from the Buddha. So often we hear it through the lens of an interpreter, who gives also his own spin to the Dhamma. So here, if we want to get the highest effect, the safest way of doing that would be to go back to the sources as closely as possible, to also make sure that it's really the unadulterated, pure teachings of the Tathagata, and not just a senior monk's personal opinion or his own take on certain affairs. But combination of these things can be fruitful nonetheless. So these are the 6 benefits of listening to the Dhamma. At the beginning I also asked, how is it then for an Arahant? Actually the Arahant is not mentioned here, right? Does an Arahant still enjoy listening to the Dhamma? Or reflecting and discussing? What do you think? Now, of course, the Arahant doesn't need anymore to listen to the Dhamma for his own purification of the mind. That kind of purpose is already finished and settled. Done is what had to be done. There's nothing further to do for the sake of liberation, as the stock phrase goes. However, we know from instances, for example, when our Sariputta, in the Theragatha, he explains how much he delights in discussing the Dhamma with others. So much so that he would sometimes even anonymously approach another monk who maybe doesn't know him. So just engage him in a Dhamma discussion, ask him some questions. Because if people know, oh, Sariputta is coming, the foremost in wisdom, they will not dare to say anything. So there's one occasion where Sariputta almost like went undercover and kind of engaged another monk in a conversation, but without revealing really who he is. He didn't lie, he didn't say he's somebody else, but he just didn't mention. So then only at the end of the conversation, the person they ask each other, what's your name? And then Sariputta says, oh, my name is Sariputta. The other one quite shocked, I said, wow, if I had known that this is you, Bhante, I would never have explained in so much detail the Dhamma of the teachings of the Buddha. But actually Sariputta wanted him to speak. He wanted to listen. He wanted to also see the understanding of the other monks. And we can see also from other suttas, Mahakusinga Sutta, where 3 Arahants are living together. And they also still come together every 5 days to discuss the Dhamma all night. 3 Arahants. So even they still enjoy hearing the Dhamma, discussing the Dhamma. It just gives them joy and happiness. Yeah. So that flavor of letting go, of relinquishment, That's why you can open this book here and any random sutta you take, it all has that same flavor of letting go, release, nibbana. The same like you go to the ocean in Penang, take a sip of water, it will taste salty, isn't it? Then you can go down to Sabah, you take a sip of water from the ocean, again it is salty. Wherever you go, the ocean is of a single taste, the taste of salt. Likewise, the teachings of the Buddha, all the teachings of the Buddha have this flavor, this taste of liberation. We keep it at that for the day. Okay, that's also good. Try to remember it, because remembering is the time, even on the deathbed, if some of the discourses or core teachings you can bring back to your mind, that can be very instrumental and can be even a gateway to liberation, where on that occasion the mind finally lets go of all the attachments, because the mind understands there's nothing I can take with me to the next life, at least none of the material things, none of my friends, none of my family members. And at that time, the mind might be ready to understand the Dhamma on a deeper level, maybe even deeper than on earlier occasions. That's why in some of the other Buddhist traditions outside of the Theravada, they have a whole system of using the time of death or even immediate afterwards as a gateway to liberation. In the Tibetan traditions, they have all these different bardo states where they say, this is actually a very opportune moment at the person who is dying or has just passed away, and maybe the spirit's still around, to listen to the Dhamma or to attain any further stages of distinction. So that's the last opportunity that one has throughout life. But then don't book all your money on that last chance, It doesn't mean now we are just waiting, okay, now take it easy. And then at the time of death, I will be really mindful. I will do all my deep contemplations. It's not so easy, Because even now, during healthy conditions, ideal conditions, you find it difficult to tame the mind, to focus on anything, to be mindful. Are you sure that at the time of death, when there's maybe bodily pain, some fear, some anxiety, we're losing everything that we have, that we're used to, at that time, that's when you will be very mindful and attentive and have deep reflections? Okay, good luck. As I said, it is an opportunity. It can be the case because the mind is forced to let go. But then there will be also other challenges coming along for the ride. So therefore it's good to reflect on the Dhamma at any time, throughout life, all the way until the last moment. Sadhu, sadhu.